after the tests in April, where Starship fully assembled took off from the launch pad in Texas, it had some engine failures and failed to separate. And if you guys remember, I do vividly, it blew up. It was spectacular.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But SpaceX regarded it as a massive success because it's the most powerful rocket that's ever been built, the most powerful system capable of reaching orbit and beyond. And just getting off the launch pad was fantastic. The negative side of it was that it caused some damage to the surrounding area in Boca Chica, Texas, right on the Mexico border. And this whole process has been held up by the FAA asking SpaceX to make fixes that can kind of, when it does attempt to launch again, which looks like this Friday at 8 a.m. Eastern time, that were there to be another explosion or system failure, it wouldn't impact the environment around it. But Tim, the way you frame it is spot on. This is the rocket that will get humankind to Mars eventually, according to Elon Musk. So that's why we care.
Hey, Ed, take us back to the environmental damage that it caused. I mean, we're talking like fires pretty far away, right?
Yeah, so if you think about it, it's a massive rocket. Go out there and use whichever search engine you prefer and just look up Starship. It's huge. And so when it exploded, debris was kind of sent far and wide. There is a large exclusion zone mandated by the FAA when a launch like this happens to protect civilians and other airspace users. But the debris was flung and there was a wildlife impact. And actually what you saw was wildlife groups sue the FAA following that April test. And they sued them saying that the FAA had approved SpaceX too quickly to be allowed to do this without fully considering the environmental impacts. So again, the FAA went back to SpaceX and said, we'll give you back your license to launch from Boca Chica, but only if you can make improvements that satisfy us that you'll address these risks. And based on the language of the FAA statement in the last hour, they are satisfied with the changes that SpaceX has made.
Concrete chunks left craters a foot deep, were strewn across tidal flats. Almost 4 acres of state park were burned. So it was pretty extreme. So they're moving forward. So this is a big move, no doubt, for Tesla. Let's transition a little bit. I mean, for SpaceX, excuse me. So let's transition to what we have all been talking about today, that maybe Starlink, that we could see an IPO, although Elon Musk came out and said false.
Right.
How are we reading? What are you hearing about this?
So all of these stories are linked, but myself and my colleagues around the country reported this morning that a listing, a spin-off of the Starlink unit via an IPO could happen late 2024 or 2025. And as you say, as soon as we published the story, Elon Musk took to X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, and said false without elaborating further. And as you guys know, I've done a lot of reporting on SpaceX and Tesla over the years, where Elon Musk has taken to social media to say false. And in the end, every single one of those stories has proved accurate. So acknowledging what he said, but it is important because 2 reasons. Investors love an IPO. And we know from the private markets and secondary markets that investors will get any chance they can to get into SpaceX ahead of what would be a potential spinoff of Starlink. But also Starlink's where all the money's being made by SpaceX. It's the cash cow that really funds this end goal, which is getting humans to Mars, because it's an expensive enterprise. And Starlink is not only going to be the majority of revenue next year, we've reported, but it's also much higher margin revenue, right? You know, launching stuff into space, the rocket side of the business, it has a limit to what it can bring in cash-wise. And so the future of SpaceX and Elon Musk's big picture, it's all dependent on a financially healthy Starlink business. And listing it, making it available to public investors, raising more funds is a part of that strategy.
I should note, full disclosure, Carol, you use Starlink.
I do.
We've talked about this in the past.
I do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, I bring that up, Carol, because Starlink, Ed, is not necessarily going to be the only game in town in the coming years. Amazon's working on Project Kuiper, which does a similar thing with a constellation of satellites. Should that competition, the competitive threat, be taken seriously?
You know, it's analogous with the world of electric vehicles, right? You know, Tesla was first in electric vehicles and everyone wrote them off. And to this day, with all the competition that we talk about on this program all the time, they're still the clear market incumbent, both from a volume perspective and a technology perspective. And the same with Starlink. There's a wonderful function on the Starlink website where you can see globally the coverage via a map, those countries where Starlink's operational and those that are about to come online. And it's connected people all over the world to the internet who would never have otherwise had access, which is really exciting as a technology story. Amazon and Kuiper is in the very early stages. They have prototype satellites in orbit. They want to build out a constellation. But remember, SpaceX was at the brink of bankruptcy in its early days, founded in 2002. Here we are in 2023, and it's taken them almost 2 decades to build out this constellation with Starlink and get it to where it is now. It's incredibly capital intensive and it takes time, but they're a clear leader.
Did you talk valuation at all in terms of what this company could be worth?
You know, we reported in June of this year based on some action in the secondaries market or the private markets for selling employee shares that the valuation's around $150 billion right now. So SpaceX is the most valuable private company in the world, pretty much. And it's fun. Like, you guys have been at Bloomberg a long time too, right? Mm-hmm. We talk so much about public companies, less about private. But certainly in my career, this is the private company that we've all followed the most closely.